Welcome to Go For Your Life. Thank you so much for tuning in and giving me your listening ears. Woohoo! This is a podcast for everyone, about everything, and it's to encourage, inspire, uplift you to go for your life. And it is presented and hosted by myself, Caro, and my sweet dog, Sparky. Give it up for him. I hope you're ready. Enjoy. And welcome back to another episode of Go For Your Life. And today's pretty exciting because I am interviewing Radha. And Radha is my Ayurvedic coach, pretty much. My Ayurvedic life coach. Welcome, Radha.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here. Slightly nervous that it's going to be you asking me questions this time. But,
yeah. The tables have indeed turned. Because it's normally the other way around. And it's also a little bit like, just for people to know, like we've done a few sessions now. I'm doing this. I've spoke about this on my podcast before, that I'm doing an Ayurveda health coach course. And you were part of that anyway. And it was really nice because I remember, I think you were hosting one of the sessions or something. And I just felt you were so vibrant. Like you just had this vibrancy, energy coming off the screen. I was like, wow, this girl is amazing. And you really had this wonderful energy. And then I think also doing the course, the foundation course, to be in this diploma course, we were also kind of encouraged to maybe do some sessions. And then I thought, like, well, if I do sessions with anyone, it has to be Radha.
Oh, you're too kind.
So here we are. But it's definitely true that I don't know that much about you, and you do know a lot about me.
Indeed.
So maybe it's an opportunity for me as well it is for the listeners to learn more about you and Ayurveda and all that stuff. But first before we get into Ayurveda. So Radha, here we are. So what I find really interesting, well, first of all, where are you from?
So I was born in North Wales, so currently residing here in what I call my mountain residence. So I was born on a stormy night in the middle of winter in a farmhouse in the mountains of Wales. So It's right, I literally live in the middle of a mountain range, and I've got sort of mixed heritage. So my mum's Irish and Welsh and my dad's Indian. So I've also had a really interesting, sort of quite colourful upbringing that had quite a lot of cultures. So I think I'm usually the other box when it comes to where are you from. It's kind of like a little bit of everywhere.
yeah. And so because you're currently in the mountains, so is that still your parents' place then or something that you're?
Yeah, so I moved away when I was 19, and I lived in England, in Yorkshire, in London, Manchester. Did some traveling, did all the university thing, had a really amazing time for about 8 or 9 years. And then just about a year before, COVID,
what happened,
and lockdown, I moved home for a couple of months, and that was 2.5 years ago. And I think I was someone who was always very focused on going somewhere and achieving a lot and doing something really special with my life. And for some reason, when I was growing up, I didn't feel that matched with the tranquility and peace of the mountains, the fact that I had no phone signal in anywhere where I lived, and just that there isn't many people around here. And I always thought that was a disadvantage.
I just want to say, it sounds amazing.
And then I grew up, and I actually realized that it was the perfect counterbalance to having a really, really beautiful, balanced life.
Yeah.
And I think I definitely learned sort of the tough way, but I think it's quite an important part of growing up is you go out there, you go searching. And then I came home and realized that actually I had something really beautiful. And now the last few years, I've just fallen in love with the mountains again and with nature.
It's nice, right? Like how you can also embrace, because I have the same kind of similar story. Like I come from a small town here called Dordrecht, and I hated it as a kid. I was could not get out of there earlier, early enough. It was just amazing. And I really didn't like it. And now I go back, being a grown up, it's oh, the city is actually really beautiful. And it has all these historic buildings and stuff like that. And you seem to just all of a sudden you start to embrace the things that you didn't embrace when you were younger. So it's and man, when you were sending me a message saying like, yeah, but this mountain house, I'm like, you have a mountain house. Oh, with like, and even like not having a bad Wi-Fi. That's just it's amazing.
Yeah, like
Isn't
we didn't have
great?
a TV till I was like 16. I don't think we had TV till then. And like we lived in the normal of like, oh, there's another power cut, or we run out of water from the mountains. And
oh man,
like it was an inconvenience then, but now I'm like, God, I'm so glad that I've had that sort of grounding nature of my, at least the beginning years, because it kind of kept me alive, I think, over the years when I was out and traveling loads and doing so much. Because I had this really solid foundation of being brought up so connected to nature, it allowed me to get out there and do a lot before I needed to come back to recharge.
That is amazing. And do you, because you were mentioning your father is Indian, did you also already grew up with Ayurvedic practices or knowing about Ayurveda because he is from India, or?
I think Ayurveda has more so become something that we've looked at in sort of the last 5 years. I think probably without knowing it, yes, because both my parents were sort of yogis and meditators, and it was very, you know, my mum got pictures of her doing all her yoga poses with me in her belly when she's like 7 months pregnant, and it was very normal for me to be around people that did sort of yoga, meditation, and a lot of the sort of what we call now, you know, the well-being things that everyone's doing. So sort of inadvertently, yes, because Ayurveda, as I'm sure we'll go on to talk about, is more than just what you're eating. It's about the whole lifestyle practices around it. So I would say yes, but we didn't call it Ayurveda back then. Yeah,
it was just the hippy dippy stuff that you refer to in when you were asking. It is an amazing interview that I listened to with Dr. Janie, who is also part of our course. She's an amazing teacher, and you are interviewing her, and I really like how you're like, yeah, that hippy dippy stuff, like how you refer to it, how some people might experience it like that, or look at it like that, you know, which I've definitely that was my first initial feeling about yoga. Like, yeah, I'm not a freaking hippie. I'm not gonna lie on a mat somewhere and do that stuff, when now it's my life. So it's, you know, it can be very different, but yeah, you are now an Ayurvedic health coach. And I think what I find really interesting with you is that you just dropped it in there once, and you're also mentioning it in this interview with Janie, is that you are a pharmacist as well. So that's a very interesting combination, I would say. Like how, I mean, that's, you know, science and spirituality coming together. So how does that work? How's that combination?
I mean, I've always had a passion for like science, education, healthcare. So I knew I wanted to do something scientifically based, even from sort of quite a young age. I have quite a creative side as well, but I definitely felt that my sort of purpose, or whatever I have to add to the world, was something along the lines of understanding our biology and its connection to everything. So I did my master's in pharmacy, which was absolutely amazing. And it was definitely an eye-opener, because actually that was a world I'd never been exposed to. I don't think I'd ever stepped foot inside a pharmacy. We didn't really use like medication that often. It was all about food and, you know, a nice honey and lemon hot drink and things. But actually what I learned actually from my degree and from my experience after that is we give everything these very defined labels of what our career is and what we do, but actually it's about what we utilize within that structure. So what I learned was about chemistry, biology, the interactions between what we put in our bodies and how that affects how we express ourselves, how genes express themselves. And then the further I've gone down the line is I've gone now more into clinical pharmacy. So I work in a hospital rather than sort of in the sort of community pharmacy environment. And that's allowed me to really go deeper into an understanding of, well, sadly, what we now use as disease management, which is most of our job, but understanding the importance of preventative medicine in this world, because we cannot keep going at the same rate that we're going now. There isn't enough medications, there's not enough doctors, there's not enough supplies in the world to keep going at this pace. So to really make the most cost effective and the most sort of integrative and very intuitive decisions, we need to look at the root. And that's where I've really found actually Ayurveda and the Western medical systems, they're not opposing powers. They're very much part of a journey. But Ayurveda comes in for me a lot earlier. And then the Western healthcare, which a lot of people see as the first step, really I now see as one of the later steps. So we need Western medicine. I think it's really important to have that understanding, but it's knowing when to use it.
Yeah.
And what I really enjoy in my role is, because I have sort of the medical sort of training, is people can come to me and I can hopefully try and encourage them to make steps at the early stages of their symptoms coming up that can transform it, so they don't have to get so far down the chronic illness pathway. And it's, you know, it's a very complicated world, but I do think for me, I've actually just started to put different bits of the jigsaw together.
Yeah, because that's exactly, it feels a little bit like a jigsaw, even how you're describing it. And because do you feel like it's also very intertwined for you, in the sense that, are you as the pharmacist sometimes also giving people Ayurvedic advice, and are you sometimes as an Ayurvedic coach also giving people advice as a pharmacist? Like, how does that work for you when you're coaching?
Definitely. I think what I'm very glad for is I'm currently growing up in a world, or practicing, or, you know, as a professional in a world that is a lot more aware. Back in the day when my mum and dad first started out, being vegetarian, doing yoga, doing meditation was not normal. Like, it was very much, you know, just a little bit, oh, what's that strange thing that you're doing? Whereas now, God, you can't go through Instagram or Facebook or go online
without seeing it happening. Yeah.
So what's really lovely and what I'm really enjoying is actually a lot of my work is based on evidence-based medicine and looking at, you know, we can only really recommend things with confidence if we feel there's a good evidence base behind them. And that can be a little bit restrictive sometimes, because that evidence isn't always completely balanced, because it depends where funding goes and comes from. But what's brilliant is now there is more and more evidence behind the power of sleep, of good nutrition, of nature. You know, even studies showing that the more time you spend looking at beautiful greenery actually improves your overall well-being. Like, the studies are coming now to support what Ayurveda and a lot of the Eastern cultures have known for centuries. So at the moment, I'm very grateful for the fact that when patients come to me with insomnia, or if they're struggling with their stress, or if they've got things like IBS, which is very much a stress-related condition, or a lot of like even chronic pain management, I have the ability now to discuss meditation as a way.
And you personally are a beautiful link, actually. Like, you're the interlink between these worlds, where normally I think, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people who practice Ayurveda or the other way around, who are like, I'm not touching that. That's not, has nothing to do, like, oh, that voodoo shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of, I think, Western doctors who would never even go near it. So I think it's also beautiful that you have these two worlds in you, actually, you know?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I just hope there's more of it. Like, I'm so excited that we've got amazing people like you that are studying our diploma courses, and there's so many more people now starting to hear about it. I mean, in London, there's even, you know, medical practices where they've got a GP and they've got an Ayurvedic doctor, and they go around and they do their ward round seeing the patients. Holistic healthcare. Medicine's slightly starting to link up all the different parts of all our physiology interlinked. So I think it's a really exciting time to be in anything Ayurvedic healthcare, because there's so many advances happening, so much more awareness and evidence behind the efficacy and the ability of these seemingly very simple interventions to actually make a huge impact on people. It's just it's nice to be able to offer people solutions. Maybe not always completely cure something, but at least offer them something that they can do, giving people back agency for their life. So you don't just sit back and think, oh, well, I'm stuffed now, I can't do anything about this, and being the victim, saying, okay, there's a lot out of my control. I might have been diagnosed with X, Y, or Z, but what can I do? And that's really beautiful.
Because also, do you feel like as a pharmacist and knowing medicine like that, and knowing, like, for me, for example, like I'm not a doctor or nurse or anything like that, or pharmacist, but I do feel that people, specifically doctors, just go to the drugs way too quick. Like, oh, this is your problem, here, have a pill, and it'll sort itself out, kind of thing. And I think a lot of times it's because they don't have the time, they or they're lazy, but most of